Every election year, someone says, shut down H-1B and hire Americans instead. Reddit is full of debates, fear, and hot takes. Well, today we are going to ask that hard question. What would actually happen if the United States ended the H-1B program? Who wins? Who loses? And what changes immediately? So, friends, as you can see, the topic of discussion for today on the screen, should the US shut down the H-1B program? What would the impact be on businesses and workers? Today, we're going to discuss on that, and we're going to have a guest join us for sure. But to keep in mind throughout this whole webinar today, I've got this important disclaimer, and that is by watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. So thank you so much for being here today with us here on Immigration Talk Show. I'm Nipasa. I'm going to be your host for this whole session. And don't forget to support us by subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. You can also check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and on Instagram and stay connected with us. And best thing is you can also join us and be a part of the show by commenting, participating wherever you're watching us, or you can call us on the number which you can see on the screen above. The number is 425-436-6335, and the access code is 988-888. And now, without further ado, please help me welcome our guest for today, Attorney Justin Rivera from Wasden Immigration Litigation. Hi, Justin. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you.
I hope you had a good, long weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, and well, so much had happened earlier also. What do you have to say?
Yeah, it was nice. It was a good break. It's always tough to come back, because it's like you come back. It's the start of December. You're so close to Christmas break. Um, you just got to kind of get yourself geared up to get through the end of the year. But we're great. Our firm's doing really well. We're prepping a couple important filings and continuing to deal with our customers' issues with either FDNS or RFE responses, NOID responses, all that. We just had a great I-485 NOID that was successful. That looks like we just got the request for the medicals about 5 minutes ago on a very convoluted case where USCIS essentially accused the individual of committing fraud or misrepresentation by failing to disclose ownership interests in companies on DS-160s they had done over the past couple of years. Um, if you were familiar with the DS-160, there is no part in it that says you have to disclose ownership interests. So should have been a pretty clear-cut argument, but they utilized that as a justification to question the validity, essentially, of the I-485. So that case looks like it's going to be approved, which is awesome, because that was a lot of work by our office to get that done. And we're just taking that and any kind of other weird cases as the year comes to an end. USCIS is definitely, throwing curveballs. Their utilization of the idea of what is discretionary has made for some much more convoluted adjudications than what we've seen over the past. I also heard from another attorney actually right before we started this call that apparently the service centers, because they've now switched over to no longer accepting checks, right? So you're having to pay by ACH or credit cards. Apparently, some of the service centers are now rejecting cases that have been accepted, claiming that the ACH payments have not gone through. So that actually just started happening recently. So we'll see what's going on with that. Anyway, I'm looking forward to getting into the discussion today.
Same here, but I think how can we not talk about the DC shooting, right? What do you have to say about that one also? I mean, now that we hear, the policies are going to be affected for sure, and how do you think, national security policies are going to be moving forward from here on?
I mean, I think it unfortunately plays into the restrictive ideology that the administration holds, right? In that they want as little immigration occurring as possible. I understand that the highlights are, their desires to attempt to end asylum programs and getting rid of TPS, which are, important issues. But that's also just a microcosm of the entirety in which immigration has changed over the past year. If you look at the increase in denial rates on EB2s, national interest waiver cases O1s and even the uptick in H-1Bs, you're seeing a way where they're essentially pushing to limit legal immigration as well. I mean, you co-opt that with the introduction of the $100,000 fee, which we've discussed in the past, which hopefully we have a ruling, on that Chamber of Commerce case in the next couple of weeks. But all of it is generally restrictive. And the idea is one of two, right? How do they justify restriction of immigration? Either national security or economic interests. And so when you have an incident like the incident that occurred in DC, that opens the door for restrictions under national security. Now, is there an argument that doing so could potentially, benefit safety of U.S. citizens? Yeah, possibly. But I think the more realistic view of it is that it helps Stephen Miller to push through his objective, which is limiting immigration as much as possible. There was a senator on recently. I apologize for not remembering his name, but he made the point that, one violent incident being the impetus or justification for a massive scale of restriction from 19 countries to the United States. It's pretty much a disservice, to all those other people by attempting to throw them all in this one basket because one single radicalized person did something. But it's not surprising. I mean, if you think about the policy that we were discussing last time you and I spoke, right? What was a lot of the impetus for getting rid of the H-4 EAD renewal? It was this idea that one person in Colorado committed an act of terrorism and that person had an EAD. And so I think you're going to see this, attempted logic to draw lines between purely isolated incidents and immigration as a whole. I think it'd be very hard to make that correlation in a logical way for anything else. For example, I think if, a person of color assaulted a police officer, I don't think the United States would then subsequently say, hey, all people that are that color, we gotta vet them more. We gotta look at them more, right? Because that wouldn't work because that people have constitutional protections and rights in this country. But because it's an immigration issue, you're able to do a lot more simply because the president's power and immigration are a lot stronger than they are in other areas. So yeah, I mean, it sucks. I feel bad for the family of the officer who's passed away, and the other one that's in critical condition. And it's horrible that happened so close to the holidays. But I think the end result of it is probably an overreaction.
Okay. Thank you so much, Justin. That's a real nice way to look at it. And thank you for, well, what can we say? The condolences are always there with the family.
Yeah.
But now, best thing is, we have a caller already who has been waiting, and I think I'll not keep him waiting for too long anymore. This is Shravan. Hi, Shravan. How are you? Tell us where you're joining us from. Are you there, Shravan? Okay, I think he will try to connect back. Shravan, are you there? All right, Justin, let's go on with
Yeah.
our questions and maybe wait for Shravan to join back. So my first question to you, Justin, would be like if the H-1B program disappeared tomorrow, would companies actually hire more Americans or would they just move the jobs to Canada and India?
It's a really good question. I think we've seen with most companies that the end game is cost, right? What is it going to cost? And in that regard, I would say that if they have the capacity or ability to offshore positions, that's going to be more in line with what they'd want to do, as opposed to actually hiring more Americans. Stepping back from that, though, I think that it's really important to kind of dispel a myth that is utilized a lot when it comes to the H-1B program, which is this idea that there are just all of these Americans who cannot get jobs because of the H-1B program. As if the H-1B program and its focus on STEM fields typically is what is prohibiting people from getting employed with these organizations. I think that's a very difficult thing to say because truthfully, if you're a company, if you're an organization and you have an opportunity to hire a U.S. citizen whose wages are not controlled by a prevailing wage, who you do not have to pay the government to employ, who you do not have to open your books up potentially to review from the federal government on, and who has the ability to potentially submit a DOL complaint against you in the event that there's, a rough termination or the individual believes they're not being paid the fair wages. If there's an opportunity to employ a U.S. citizen instead, I believe a lot of companies would side with just hiring a U.S. citizen. I think the problem is there's a lack, and it has been said by people, and I know that individuals get mad about it when it's said, but I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy even made the point. There's a lack of available individuals to do some of these jobs that take up what the H-1B system encompasses. And if a company is not able to garner that talent through the H-1B program, and there's not an available person in the United States, then yeah, offshoring is going to be what they do. And I think that unfortunately, you see the H-1B program get kind of scapegoated because it's kind of a perfect mix when it comes to creating a problem with immigration, right? You have someone who gets approved for an H-1B. The system's traditionally made for that individual to be on H-1B for 6 years, right? When everything was being put into place, the idea was, oh, well, if the person wants to stay here, they can get sponsored for a green card. They get a green card, no problem. Well, then the backlogs become, a problem for certain individuals. So those people now have to wait longer and longer on an H-1B in order to get their green cards, which means now you have new people coming in every year with that 85,000, and you have other people who have possibly been waiting 10, 12, 15 years, all on H-1B. So it creates this much bigger pot for who is on H-1B. I think now numbers are between something like 450,000 and 700,000, I think, is the H-1Bs. So look at that. That's a sizable portion of the job market. All of these people working in specialized fields, right? Otherwise, they can't qualify for the H-1B. If you get rid of that, then I think if there are avenues that can't be outsourced, like let's say, for example, a doctor. You can't outsource a doctor, right? You can't say, call the doctor, he's in India or Canada, and they'll see you. You have to have somebody here on site doing that. There, you either go without, or you're trying your best to find someone in the US that can do the job. And then for all the other tech sectors and stuff, I think you'd likely see them offshore. And if they didn't offshore, they'd probably do the best they could to automate, utilize AI. And I think that in tech, to be blunt, they're already trying to do that, right? I mean, they have pretty much annual layoffs at this point where people are just constantly being replaced. It looks like either through technology or new individuals or some combination of both. But my holding would definitely be that you would see a significant increase in offshoring where it would be possible, right? So that'd be areas where individuals had the capacity or ability to work remotely. I think for the higher tiered positions, things like managers, executives, things like that, if you have a foreign office, then you have an opportunity to explore L1s, but that's going to screw over smaller companies that don't have international offices. And so they're going to be in a position where they may go without or have to hire someone that's less qualified. And I don't know. I mean, I think as a whole, the H-1B program, it's regulated in a pretty significant manner. It has mechanisms for enforcement through FD&S and the Department of Labor. And I think that while there are people who absolutely attempt to squeak through the cracks and, maybe not file within the parameters of what they're supposed to be in terms of the H-1B program, I think that overall individuals are fairly consistent. And so I think that replacing a program that seemingly works with nothing would be ridiculous. I think that if there was some sort of long-term plan to, minimize the utilization of the H-1B program or revitalize it, and its end game was to increase US-based hiring, it would need to come with a significant investment in education in STEM fields in the United States. And I have heard from people that they try to do that, and there just is a lack of applicants from the US. And so that's a problem, which is why they turn to foreign talent, which usually initially starts out as a foreign student. And, unless we have kids here today that want to be in those fields that we can hire for those jobs, we have to get the talent somewhere. And so, yeah, I think that you would just see massive outsourcing and then people going without until people could fill those jobs. Hopefully the next generation or the ones that are coming up, there's more of a STEM focus, I would hope. But I actually, as an exercise, and I'm a guy living in Houston, Texas, so it's an anecdotal story, but I was thinking about it, and I was like, how many people do I know that are U.S. born that have a degree in STEM? And I think it was two. And I'm a college educated guy, went to law school. I've interacted with a lot of smart people, a lot of people that have degrees. And I was thinking of the people coming up in my age, and what were we all doing? We were doing business, accounting, um, political science like I did. And so, yeah, I feel like there needs to be that base, and that base doesn't exist right now. And hopefully it can in the future. But until then, I think H-1B is important because it helps the United States not only with retaining talent in terms of individuals that come in on F1s, but typically foreign nationals are more likely to be business owners or innovators or individuals who are going to, help the economy by hopefully starting a business. Maybe when they get their green card, now you can actually file a concurrent H-1B where you do open your own company. And so those are all things that are stimulating and beneficial. I think the utilization of the program is far more helpful than it is harmful to the U.S. economy and the U.S. writ large.
All right. So definitely, Justin, folks out there, if you are with H1B, say with H1B. And if you are not, then say no H1B. You can comment wherever you're watching us from. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. And earlier, like I was saying, we have Shravan on call with us. So Shravan is actually joining us from somewhere near Minneapolis. Hi, Shravan. Are you there now? I just hope we're not lost him. Hello, Shravan. Hello, are you there, Shravan?
There's questions in the chat if you just want to take those.
Hello.
Yes. Hi, Shravan. Yes. Please tell us where have you joined us from and what your question is. We have Attorney Justin with us.
So, yeah, my question is once again, just so first my question is my wife had a visa complication prior related to should so it's any impact for the H4 visa.
Justin, were you able to get the question?
No, I couldn't hear any of that.
Yeah, should I repeat one more time? Shall I repeat one more time?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, my wife had a visa complications prior related to H1B. They issued I 878 under Swan statement under section 35B. So this is a document they given to recent now I want to bring her on H4. Is there any issue with to bring me on H4? No.
Well,
Um,
so was she denied? Was she denied a visa at the consulate, or was she denied entry to the United States?
Sorry, she got divided May month. Sorry, June, July, this year.
in the month of June or
Okay,
July, she was denied.
so if she got an I-867A, that's an order for expedited removal. So an order for expedited removal typically carries with it a 5-year ban to reentry to the United States, and that says nothing of the fact of the basis of the visa refusal. I mean the entry refusal. So yeah, I think that if you're it, what wants to bring his wife on H4, currently amendment in progress for location change to California. Can we apply for H4? So your wife, if she has an expedited removal order that was just issued in July of this year, she has a 5-year reentry. And I would also need to look at a copy of the order to see why they refused her entry. Sometimes those orders can carry with them a 6C fraud finding, which would be a permanent bar to readmissibility. So best case scenario, the 5-year bar to reentry, you would have to try and overcome with a waiver. That's going to be difficult. If it's a fraud
Yeah.
finding on top of that, that's a permanent bar to reentry, which means it's going to be very, very, very hard for her to get back into the United States, and she would have to get a waiver. So I would say, yes, it's going to be relevant to her reentry. She's going to be questioned about it at the consulate, and unless she's for a waiver, she's not going to be admitted for at least 5 years. I would say if you want our office to take a look at that, you could send us an email. That is part of the services that we do, is helping people prepare for consulate waiver applications. But yeah, that I-67 is 100% going to be an issue.
Okay, Shravan, I hope you got your answer.
She got employee issue. Because they're saying employer is not eligible. So the employee visa got cancelled. They say common different visa. But I'm asked them is an issue with an expert. One more question is, so my job location is first while I'm entering to the H-1B in different employee in US. So later on I got one more new opportunity. So I switched to California. The amendment got invoked. So is there any impact to apply H4 visa if the amendment is in progress? Is there an issue with to file export for Mumbai while amendment is in progress?
Okay, so I think, Shravan, what I can Hi, Shravan. I hope that you can hear us. We can't hear you so well, actually. So, what I would like you to do is email us, please. And you can email me at nipa@staffingly.com, or WhatsApp me where you have already WhatsApped me. My number is 408-335-6444. And you can also email at support@wasden.law. I think that'll be best so that you can get in touch directly with Attorney Justin Rivera. And thank you so much for joining us. I wish the line was clearer, but thank you so much for your effort and for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. All right, there's so much to talk about, Justin. I really wanted to ask you my next, which is H-1B really the problem, or is it easier to blame immigrants than to blame corporations for layoffs and wage policies?
Yeah, I think the program's a little bit of a scapegoat overall, right? What's been happening over the past couple of years is you have an issue where the economy, by the traditional standards of viewing the stock market, is doing well, but people individually, individuals feel like things aren't going well because things cost more, wage increases are not keeping up with inflation, and that's something that predates this administration. I mean, I don't think that this administration has done anything to help in that regard, but it is something that has happened for more than just the past year. I think when people get frustrated with economics, they try to find a scapegoat, right? They want to find a justification as to why things aren't going well for them. It's a lot easier to do that by saying it's immigrants that are the problem versus addressing, the fact that corporations continue to turn record profits while shrinking their employees, right? And that's a harder thing to deal with because then you're getting into questions of capitalism, late stage capitalism being what we're in. So yeah, I think the easier solution there is to say, like, well, if there were less immigrants, there'd be more jobs. But as we talked about with the previous question, it's a significantly more complex issue than that, because the issue, truthfully, is supply. What is the supply for these positions? And if there's a supply that exists, and I don't know that, you know what? You're welcome to email me and say, you're dumb, Justin. Here's the fact. These are all these grads that just came out in STEM fields that are US born that can't find jobs. Put that data in front of me and I'll say, okay, maybe there's a little bit of a point to that. That's not what I understand about the program. Now, I think that the H-1B, it's something that unless you have an understanding of the nuances of it's very easy to just say that's a cheap labor program that lets people come into the United States and work jobs that should go to people that make $30,000 or $40,000 more dollars. Look, maybe that was the case 10 years ago. I'm telling you this. After the first Trump administration, it's really not the case. I mean, even if you're filing low-level wages at this point for software developers or computer systems analysts, unless you're putting them in like Wyoming or places with low prevailing wages, those people are getting paid 80, 90, 100K. File anything in California for somebody and they're going to make six figures by default. And so there's been things that have been put in place to ensure that there is compliance and that there isn't a way to kind of game the system with these low wage employees. So yeah, I think that corporations are going to do what corporations do. They're going to take advantage of certain circumstances and situations, maximize profits while minimizing overhead, right? It's a tale as old as time. Their utilization of H-1B workers is basically them kind of working the system, and the system is geared more towards them now more than ever. If you think about the implementation of the 100K fee in the current iteration, if it stands or pass muster, you're basically going to eliminate small employers from being able to use the system to recruit foreign talent, unless that foreign talent is here in the United States presently at the time that they file for them. It's just going to be too difficult for a company that maybe is a startup or has existed for 4 or 5 years to eat 100K fee on top of all the fees they're paying to USCIS already. And so I think it's already stacked to benefit corporations. I think they want to tilt it more, the program, towards benefiting corporate, and by the way, when I say corporation, I mean large Fortune 500 companies, right? Not the mom and pop consulting companies that got 15 people in it, the big ones. I think they're going to use what tools are available to them. But at the end of the day, if you get rid of that program, the H-1B program, I really don't believe you would see all these companies then turn around and say, well, I guess we're going to pay a bunch of kids fresh out of college, $150,000 a year. Because if they would, they probably already went and got them. They've already gotten that talent. So yeah, I think that it is easier to blame immigration because there's an element of control to immigration, right? The U.S. government actually can set and create policies. Now, conversely, could they set policies on limiting the number of H-1B employees companies have? I don't know. Is that something they'd want to explore? I'm not sure. But I know that's something that they're never going to bother to bring up because at the end of the day, corporations are benefiting from the program. And so, yeah, it'll be utilized as a scapegoat. And it's been utilized as a scapegoat for almost the entirety of my practice period.
There you go. Thank you so much, Justin, for taking that up. And I would really like to say hi to Haley Rose. Then we have Sumit Kumar, Sid Mohan. Thank you so much for your questions. Let's quickly pick up Haley's question, please. And she's saying lawmakers are discussing alternatives to the H-1B program. What realistic policy options are being considered, and how might they balance business needs with immigration concerns?
It's really hard because there are every year, almost it feels, there's some sort of bill that's put forth that's supposed to reshape or make an alteration to immigration. It never passes. And the truth of the matter is because it's become so polarizing that it's very difficult for either party to reach a level of consensus on anything that's not broad. Really overarching broad strokes like giving lots of money to DHS or, us allocating funds to USCIS or raising fees on stuff. Those are things that everyone can agree on because it's just kind of throwing money in a hat. It's broad. The more nuanced sort of changes to immigration, never seemingly come to pass, just to be blunt with you. I have heard since 2016 about the idea that they were going to fix the visa backlog. And nothing's changed, right? We're all still dealing with the exact same problem. And I think a big issue about the H-1B program is the visa backlog. Because the fact of the matter is that if a lot of these people transition to green cards when they should be able to, then we wouldn't be having discussions about H-1B because there wouldn't be this level of saturation in the market. Because people wouldn't have to wait 15 or 16 years to get to get a green card. And so I think that's a big problem. And when you start talking about that, you start going backwards and saying, okay, well, why is there a green card backlog? What can be done to fix the backlog? Proposals get put up and shot down immediately. There are bills that come out, like I said, almost every year that are basically torpedoed, dead on arrival, because one party is going to say that the other party is screwing over U.S. citizens by allowing more people to have green cards, without the understanding that, well, that would actually cut down the amount of people that are on H-1Bs year to year. So I think until you deal with the backlog, you have the H-1B issue. And then the H-1B issue being what it is, it's what are the alternatives to the program? I mean, you see the alternative visa issues that exist, right? You have your TNs for Mexico and Canada. You have your L1s. You have your E3s for Australians, which are literally just H-1Bs. And all of those options are outside of the L1 and the O, specific to where the individual is coming from. I don't think the H-1B program is something that they would remove. I think that they would love to revise it as much as possible. And those revisions would be borne out in, increasing wages as much as possible, increasing vetting as much as possible. And then, in my personal opinion, ensuring that H-1Bs only go to the companies that are really high up politically. I'm trying to find a nice way to say that. The ones that donate the most to a certain person's campaign. But I do think that that would be their end goal, is to revise the current system in a way that prioritizes big companies and kind of shuts the door on mid-size and small firms, which I don't think is good for business overall. I don't know if you guys are aware, but it actually kind of sucks when industries become consolidated. If you want to see what that's like, go on an airplane. So we can remind ourselves that, when mergers continue to happen and competition doesn't exist, kind of runs counter to capitalism. I think that if there are alternatives being put forth, it would be very unrealistic that they are actualized. I would be surprised if they were. I think what you're going to see is, and I think you've continued to see it with, for example, their desire to change the visa lottery, the H-1B lottery, with how they allocate it based on a level 1 through 4 wage. I think they're wanting to drive up the cost to be a part of it, to drive down participation, and kind of shut the door on certain organizations. I really would be surprised if an alternative to the H-1B was created.
That's for sure. And I think if it at all there would be any alternative, everybody's going to run to that, and that as well is going to be backlogged as soon as possible. Who knows? But thank you
I
so
don't
much,
know.
Haley.
I think it's possible. I think in the alternative, if there are these real concrete changes made to the F1 program, like what's being proposed, and eliminating duration of status, putting specific durations, reshaping OPT and STEM OPT, I think you're going to see less kids coming here to go to school. That's just the truth. And I don't think attracting intelligent foreign talent to the United States is a bad thing. But the fact of the matter is if you're a kid, and look, I'll be honest with you, if I was a 16 or 17-year-old kid from another country and I've seen what the United States immigration has looked like for the past year, I don't know if going to Stanford or Harvard is going to be worth it. I genuinely don't know. I at this point, it probably still is, because of the importance of those degrees and the credibility that they give an individual. But I also know that, if I'm that foreign national kid and I think, hey, maybe Canada's a little bit better, which I don't know if it is, or, maybe Australia is better now just because they give you more opportunities and less restrictions, then maybe I should go there instead. I think that, we're in year 1 of this administration, and there's already been significant changes. And I think that you're going to only see that continue. I mean, they're going to be emboldened to try to enact as much change to immigration as they possibly can. So those changes are going to be long lasting. I remember telling people after Trump left office and Biden came in, they were like, oh, everything's going to be great now. It's going to be 99% approval ratings. I said, yeah, I mean, it'll be better because the cases will be more properly adjudicated, but it's going to take a long time to undo the policies that were put in place during that previous administration. We're going to see that here, regardless of what happens in with the next administration. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what foreign enrollment's going to look like. I know it's down this year. I've already seen statistically foreign enrollment is down. Colleges are pissed, obviously, because that's money that they're now losing. And that's probably something that's going to continue over the next few years.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much, Justin, for taking that up. And Haley, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you got your answer, and you can keep commenting if you have any more point of views to share as well. And do follow us on Immigration Talk Show at Immigration Talk Show on YouTube, and also check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and on X as well. Then we have Sumit Kumar saying, I have an H-1B approval, but I'm still outside the US waiting to travel. If the program is restricted or shut down, will I lose my chance to enter and start working?
So if you have an H-1B approval and it's for this year and you were approved on 10/1, I'm not really sure what you're doing outside of the US still. I probably would get a visa and come in because, for one thing, I have already been told by people that there's now starting to be like significant questioning at the consulate if people are outside the United States for a significant period of time as to whether or not the job offer remains valid. The idea being we need this person in the U.S. We're going to have them come in as quickly as possible. So I think entering would be a priority. I would probably say you should try to get here by the beginning of next year. Otherwise, you're going to have something that's 3 months old, and I think you're going to see questions by the consulate and by CBP when you're coming in. Um, in terms of restrictions on the program, those restrictions that they're now putting forth are mostly tied to the 100K fee, which is supposed to be due with the petition. So, I mean, after you've been approved, you're kind of through the looking glass. You're not having to deal with that. So, yeah, I would try to come in sooner rather than later. I think if you have an H-1B and you haven't activated it, the longer you take, the higher the probability that you're going to face issues at the consulate. And if you face it, I'm going to be blunt with you guys. I've seen this year a sort of shift starting with employers where they're kind of done with this. If you get a 221G and it's been 3 months and you're not here, they're firing you. They're just saying, we're done. We're going to move on. We'll find someone else that's here in the United States. 221Gs are way up, okay? 221Gs are being put out for pretty much anything under the sun. The consulate has honestly moved itself more towards this idea of being a secondary adjudicator of an H-1B petition, as opposed to its previous desired purpose, which was like reviewing the authenticity of the case for like fraud or misrepresentation. I've seen a lot more people get 221Gs where they're basically being told, you got to provide all of your docs related to your project, or who's your in-client supervisor, what's their name and phone number, so that we can call them or forward the case to FDNS so FDNS can verify the authenticity of it. And I think the longer you remain outside the United States, the higher the probability exists that you're going to be put in that circumstance. So I think, yeah, I would prepare to enter in the next month. And if you don't enter and your H-1B is stale, meaning 4, 5, 6 months without an initial entry, good luck getting in. I think you're going to have a hard time.
Well, all the best, Sumit, and come to the US. I don't know what are you doing where you are, but thank you so much, Justin, for taking that up. And my next question, Justin, what happens to the 200,000 international students graduating every year if H-1B disappears? Do they leave, or does America lose future innovators?
I think you're going to see a brain drain. Honestly, I think if policies remain the way they are, you'll see an exodus. Those 80K a year that exists, it's going to be for kids that are, they've got their bachelor's degree. Some of them come with their bachelor's already and get a master's degree. They take cracks at the lottery, right? Usually during their graduation year while they're on OPT, and then STEM OPT, and then you get those 3 years. And if you're not picked up and approved, you're usually in trouble. You usually have to leave or transition to another status. I know that there are a small percentage of the so-called forever students who get a second master's or get a PhD or, do what they can to get more cracks in the lottery and remain in the United States. I think by and large, you have like that 3-year window. The H-1B visa is truly a recruitment mechanism for F1 status, right? Because it presents a legitimate path to employment, but also a green card, right? And H-1B is a dual intent visa. Once you secure that H-1B, you no longer have to worry about immigrant intent. It's anticipated. And as the laws were drawn up, encouraged, because the goal was it's a pipeline. You get these talented foreign nationals into the United States on F1. You move them into H-1B as they get their STEM master's degree. You keep them in the U.S. on H-1B until they transition to their green card. And like I said, it's a pipeline. You keep them here. You keep their intelligence, their know-how, but also their tax dollars, their abilities to stimulate the economy. And those were seen until not that long ago as beneficial. And so now when you look at it and you think, okay, if we want to remove that system or cut down on that system, what is the economic impact? I think the economic impact is colossal. Removing even what the companies would do in the event that the H-1B wasn't there, they wouldn't even have access to hiring for certain individuals because those individuals would likely never come to the United States. And I know that people talk about like the O1 as this idea as a backstop, as like a here's what you can do if the H-1B doesn't work. I really think we need to stop pretending that the O1 isn't the incredibly high tiered visa that it is, because it's supposed to literally be for the cream of the crop. You're the top 10% in what you do. Okay. That's not a lot of people. All right. Like to make this idea that it's like, I wrote 5 research papers and I judged a competition on robotics. You're not going to qualify for an L1 just based off that. So that is not a realistic alternative to the H-1B. So yeah, I think that we would lose out on a lot of talent, and it would be unfortunate because that talent would either go back to their home country after getting a U.S. degree, which is what we didn't want happening as recently as 15 years ago, or they would never enter the United States in the first place, and they would just go to universities in other countries.
Yes. Thank you so much, Justin, for taking that up. And well, we have Bhargav also who has joined us. Bhargav, I'm going to take your question. He's asking if the H-1B program was shut down, what immediate consequences would US companies, especially in technology and healthcare, face in terms of talent shortages and competitiveness?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a colossal brain drain. In those industries where you're not able to outsource to, you would see direct like community issues. If there's a shortage of staffing of nurses in a rural town that utilize the H-1B program and those individuals are no longer able to use it, then those jobs just go unfulfilled, unless they're able to find someone in the market. They haven't found someone in the market. That's why they're utilizing the program. And so, yeah, I think that it would be tremendously problematic. I mean, I've talked about this case before, but I think it's a stressor to explain like where we are in the current state of immigration. I had a lady who is a special education teacher in South Carolina who overstayed her visa, and she has a 3-year barter reentry. We tried to get her a waiver, and they just said no. They literally said their justification was they can just hire someone else. Well, the school district sent the consulate a letter saying we can't hire someone else. We've looked and we've tried. This person has 5 years of experience with special needs children. That is not something that's just out there in the world. That's not something that's easy to just have. This person is unique, specialized, and needed. Consulate still said, nah, they can come in after 3 years. But the point of that is, those are the kind of circumstances where it's frustrating when people talk about the H-1B program and say like, oh, it's just a system for people to manipulate it. And they're able to get low wage software developers. That's a part of this process, but it's not the entirety of it. And even that part of the process is regulated. And I think that it's difficult to have conversations about the H-1B program with people that lack the understanding of it. And it totally makes sense, right? If I didn't do this for a living, why would I know this information? The same thing with a mechanic, right? I'm not going to go talk to a mechanic and be like, I know all about, my car's engine because I read one article about it. It's like, well, no, that person's an SME. They're a subject matter expert. So it's difficult to have the conversations because the talking points about the negatives of the H-1B are simplistic, concise. Foreign workers, low wages, American jobs. Just that's the points that are hit over and over again without actually diving into the nuance. And it's very interesting to see. Sorry, my nose. It's 38 degrees here, so I've had a runny nose all morning. It's very interesting to see the kind of stances of people that are actually like out there. Like, you have the policymakers who would say one thing. You have the president who has multiple times endorsed H-1Bs. I'm sure to the chagrin of Stephen Miller. But you also have these people in industries that are coming out that are saying like, hey, these programs are important. Like we need these because we need to fill these positions. And so the people that are against the programs are basically just they're using smear campaign talking points without actually diving into the intricacies of the program itself. And so that kind of goes back to the previous question that we talked about. Like it would create a talent shortage, right? It would create a brain drain. But it wouldn't just impact companies right now. It would impact schools. It would impact colleges and their ability to recruit people. Because if there's no pipeline to eventually get a green card through employment, then it limits their desire to come here. And I think we should really dive into this. Like the H-1B is not a, hey, you come here and you're good to go. Like you have to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree in a specific specialty, which means that you are falling into the category of highly educated individuals. I'm going to Google something real quick. I just want to see. Okay. According to this, in 2022, 37.6% of U.S. adults aged 25 and older have a bachelor's degree or higher. So 37% of people in the United States have a bachelor's degree, right? That's the idea. It looks like that number comes up to 42.8 in more recent years, but it looks like 41. It's all age demographic out, but let's say generally 37.6. So 37% of people in the U.S. that are in the labor market have a bachelor's degree, which means, 80 or 60, 70%. This is why I don't do math. 60%, like 60% of that market does not have a degree, right? But how many jobs actually require a degree now? I'm sure it's a large swath of what the economy has. So that creates obviously an opening where individuals are needed that have these degrees. Enter individuals from the H-1B program. So if you remove those individuals from the program, unless we drastically increase the number of individuals who are obtaining bachelor's degrees or higher, you're not going to be able to fill those positions, which means they'll get eliminated, the work will be allocated to someone else, or they'll be outsourced.
Yes, for sure. And it's pretty harsh. I mean, the thing you just shared about, I mean, it's a specialty occupation after all, and knowing how to treat special kids, that's an experience not everybody has, and definitely was very harsh. And that person was needed. So I'm sure like there's so many other jobs also where people are actually needed, and that's why we have this program, right? If it was not required, then it would always be filled by so many others already here.
Yeah,
So
and that's like that's what frustrates me when you wrap the H-1B program into all immigration. Like this is not asylum; it's not temporary protective status. These are educated professionals who overall overwhelmingly benefit the United States. And to just kind of roll them all into one bucket, it's ridiculous. Anyway, we don't have much time left, so we can get to one or two more questions.
sure, yes. We have a question already on the screen by Sumit. I have an H-1B approval, but I'm still outside the US. We already took this actually in control, so thank you so much. And Justin, there's so much to talk about, but I think since we don't have much time, uh, what should what would you like to say? So should the US shut down the H-1B program? And I mean, generally, it's going to impact a lot of businesses, like you already said. The
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. It's not. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that you'll see a more restricted program, obviously, over the next couple of years. But I think for the program will remain. Will it remain a talking point? A negative talking point? Yes, because the fact of the matter is, like I said earlier, the idea of being against it is pretty simplistic. We just don't want foreign workers, right? They're stealing U.S. jobs. That's a tale as old as time, right? That anti-immigration rhetoric is something that's been around, been pervasive since I think going as far back as the 1950s, 40s, maybe even further back to Chinese immigrants coming in and stealing, railroad worker jobs or whatever. So that's always going to be a hot button talking point. But like we've talked about, when you dig into the minutia of it, there's a need. And where there's a need, there's going to exist a program, right? Until there is a removal of that need, meaning that there are more STEM-based US-born individuals, then there's going to continue to be a need for foreign talent. My youngest son had a heart condition, but thank God we got it taken care of. But what was really interesting was the doctors that treated him at Texas Children's Hospital here in Houston. His surgeon was British, and his primary doctor was Indian.
That's very nice. All immigrants again.
Yeah, and again, providing highly skilled services. That it's not. I promise you, Texas Children wasn't just like, we don't want to hire Americans to do this job. No, it's we want the best talent we can get in the world. We have an individual from India category. We have an individual from Britain that falls into that category, and that's it. And it allows the United States to remain competitive and at the not even competitive at the absolute cutting edge from a technological standpoint, from a healthcare standpoint, with AI, all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, what I would leave it with is the H-1B program is a massively beneficial tool for the United States. It should remain a massively beneficial tool for the United States. And if you have any problems with it, go through the proper procedures. Utilize FD&S to investigate companies that you think aren't using the system properly, rather than just thinking that you can destroy the entire system itself and lose all the benefits that it's given you.
Sure, sure. But what if the H-1B really ended? What do you think America would become more competitive? Or do you think the world's innovation is simply going to happen somewhere else, not America
No, I
anymore?
mean you would just have a circumstance where people wouldn't want to come to this country as much anymore. I mean, that's really what it would be. You would literally have a drain on immigration. And if you fall into that category of saying, "Cool, that's great. We need less immigrants," then you also need to be cognizant of the fact that what immigrants contribute to societies. You can remove almost all of what we have discussed today, and if you want to get blunt about it too, if you look at Japan right now, they're literally in a deficit when it comes to their population because there's now like less kids being born than the level of people that are dying. So they basically have a negative replacement rate, right? What helps with that is immigration because usually you bring in over people that are young. Those people have families. The H-1B program is for young, educated people to come to the United States. Usually they're going to come here and they're going to pay their taxes. They're going to buy homes. They're going to have families that they're going to enroll in schools that are probably going to go to U.S. colleges. And so all of that should be seen as beneficial. Now, if you have a counter argument to that, I would just say this. You've got to be able to say, if we get rid of something, what do we replace it with? And if that something is nothing, corporations aren't going to go for it. Companies aren't going to go for it. And it's just not going to pass, right? Because they're the ones who donate money to the politicians that vote on the policies. And so I don't see, like I said earlier, I don't see the program going away. If it were to go away, it would be massively harmful to the United States economy. And so it's not going to happen, no matter what the rhetoric remains. It's just not going to happen. But yeah, if it did happen, it would be bad. And I don't even say that as just an immigration attorney. I mean, generally speaking, as how it would impact the United States, it would be bad. We would fall behind other countries that begun to utilize the accumulation of talent that we have had access to over the last 50 years.
That's so true. 100%. Well, I think we'll have to end it on that, Justin. I think it's a good note. And thank you so much for being a part of this session today. It was really wonderful having you. And I really wish the call earlier with Shravan was clearer. But Shravan, once again, I would like to tell you that you can get in touch with Attorney Justin Rivera. You can check out the link which you can see on the screen or email him at support@walston.law, especially with all the details. And yes, thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this. Justin, thank you once again.
Thank you for having me. I do have to walk my dog, so I'm going to go. You all have a good one.
Enjoy your walk. Bye bye. So, friends, thank you so much once again for joining us here. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. And also, leave what you think. Should the H-1B program end or not? And tell us where you have joined us from. Would be lovely to get to know you as well. And you can keep commenting wherever you're watching, or also get in touch with me. You can call me on my WhatsApp number or WhatsApp me on my number that is 408-335-6444, or you can email me at nipa@staffingme.com. Once again, stay in touch with us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and on Instagram. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. This is it for today. Y'all out there, keep on having a wonderful day ahead and a splendid week ahead. This is Nipasa saying bye for now.